Hi. Today I'm going to talk to you about a difficult subject because it talks about how terribly some people in the United States were treated. This is a subject about slavery, and if you're not familiar with that is, it was some people were treated so poorly and that they were sold just like this desk or a horse or a car. They were treated like property, and that should have never happened, and it should never happen today. And unfortunately, there's about 167 countries where it's still happening today. So we need to work and be informed and pray for that to end, just like it did in the United States. In 1865, it stopped in the United States. Later than some countries, and like England, it was about 30 years before that, and because of some brave people fighting for that and saying that it was wrong, it did stop here and fighting for that. So we would like that to happen in all the countries, right? So there was something called the Underground Railroad, and I had one daughter that was very interested in it, and she read a lot of books, and there's some great stories about it. Now, this was not a railroad like we think of with trains on it. This was like a secret passage system where people could go to certain people's homes that were safe if a slave wanted to run away from his master, that was the person who owned him. They would have knowledge of where to go, like what barn to sleep in on one night, and then the next day maybe there was a carriage that they could sleep in or a field that was safe for them, and people would bring out food to them and help them get to states where it was illegal to have slaves. So I'm going to tell you about just one of those people that made that passage. He did it quite differently than all the rest. His name was Henry Box Brown, and you're going to see why he got the middle name of Box, because that wasn't the one he was born with, right? So when he was little, he was a slave with his mom, and then one day his master, the slave owner, the one who owned him, and we're not supposed to own people, are we? That's wrong. That is wrong. Gave Henry to another family, his son actually, so he could be a slave for him. And he worked very hard, and he was good. And as he grew up, he fell in love with a woman named Nancy, and they had some children. And they had different slave owners, but they were allowed to live together, so that was nice, and they were grateful for that. That wasn't always the case. And like I said, they had children, and then one day Henry found out that his wife and his children were sold to another family. He was about 33 at this time. They didn't keep real good records, and they didn't even tell slaves when their birthday was, so they couldn't celebrate their birthdays like we do. They just, every year would just pass, and they didn't even really know how old they were, but they suspected he was about 33 years old when he was just so devastated and sad that he lost his family, that he decided he wanted to be free, and he was going to escape, and he wanted to go on the Underground Railroad. But then he had an idea, and he met a doctor who hated slavery. He was a white man, and he hated slavery, and he wanted the laws to change. So he decided to help Henry escape. So he built him a box. It was just 3 feet by 2 feet. Now you could measure that later and see how small this box was. And Henry got in the box, and then the doctor wrote an address on it to some friends in Pennsylvania. Now, if I didn't mention it already, Henry lived in Virginia, so maybe you could find a map and look at Virginia and then see where he was going in Pennsylvania. So he got in this box and shipped himself, just like you would mail or a package to somebody. And he was in this cramped box, and first they just threw him on a steamship, and he was upside down for the whole way on the steamship, or most of the way on the steamship, they think. And then he was finally turned over. Then he was put on a train, And then finally he got to Pennsylvania, about 350 miles. So that's a long time to be in that cramped little box. But once he got there, he was able to be a free man. But people were looking for him. So he ended up going to England to escape. And then he spoke out against slavery as well. So there were a lot of heroes during that time. A lot of people stepped up and did the right thing. And, I just know that I want to do the right thing in situations where I feel like people are being mistreated. And I hope that you do too. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of a story. If you want to learn more about Henry, there is a children's book called Henry's Freedom Box written by Ellen Levine. It's a great book. So I would recommend that. And I hope you have a great day.